So anyway, I planned to actually have a week from today, like a workshop where we actually show me the profile stories you got, whether you've written the whole thing or not, that's fine. And then I want to be able to look at them and give you an idea if you're not heading on the right track, okay? And I mean, I don't mean this as like a put down like that, but like some of the stuff I saw from section 2 on Thursday, I thought to myself, we need more time. So, all right. I want to make sure that, like, again, like I've said this before, you know, again, I know with writing for media, you probably have had all different types of, you know, teaching, you know, and I've heard it about it. So, so I want to be able to, like, I understand like video, like you took this class because maybe again you taught me to be like and video and digital, and, you know, pictures and blah blah blah, get to go out and all that stuff and blah blah blah. But you know, we got to make sure that we have a solid foundation on what 5 tools I talked about. The number 1, which is the writing part, because again, the whole idea with that is, I mean, it's basically the same form of journalism you did writing for media, but in this class, in this form of journalism, digital, which is what Bill's going to talk about today. You really got to be more than ever, you know, really exact and succinct and focused in your writing. Okay.
Yeah, good writing, it reflects disciplined thinking too. So that, I mean, that's a real opportunity to hone your craft and your thought process about what you want to say and how you want to say it.
Right, and there's so much about, you know, there's beauty. I've said this one time. It's kind of corny, but there's like beauty and simplicity. So the whole idea of actually being able to break things down in a way so that like people from, again, typically it's like 4th grade on up, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I mean, the whole idea again is that, like, you know, your kids did a 4th grade current event project. My kids did a 4th grade current. You probably did one too. The whole idea is that like you're able to read that stuff, understand that stuff in 4th grade.
Yeah, your typical New York Times is written out of 8th grade reading.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're not trying to write college, you know, scholarly academic prose when you're conveying your journalism.
Yeah, New York Times is self-important. But, so a family New York Times, man. Yeah. Anyway, no, I'm just kidding. But anyway, so I want to make sure that we get this part down first, okay? And then we can. I mean, I also want to make sure that, you know, we had people in class that you guys got your pictures, because, you know, that is actually also part of the assignment. Don't forget, is actually getting a picture of your subject. Okay, so we did talk about that in class. So I want to make sure that you get a good picture. Okay, I want to make sure that, you know, you follow the standards that we talked about, using a rule of thirds, that sort of thing. If you weren't here for that, make sure maybe watch the video overlay I have for that, or maybe just talk to me about it like whenever after class, or like, you know, or you know, or through email, or if you want to like have office hours, that we can do that too. Okay, don't be afraid to ask for office hours, because we're almost at the halfway point of the semester, believe it or not. I also want to get you guys a grade, so which, you know, we haven't issued yet. That's another reason why I want to make sure that you get some grade very soon. So that's another reason why I added this additional assignment, if you can follow here. There's a second assignment that's due the same day as your first assignment, and it's worksheets. And all I need you guys to do is just to make sure that
Screen jump. Screensaver, I guess. Oh, there you
okay.
go.
I think you actually touched something there. But anyway, I want to make sure that, like, that's actually essentially an assignment where you basically write leads. That's what you do. It's not basically, that's what you do, is you write leads. And this is the assignment where I really want you guys to learn the importance of writing a lead that is snappy. And, you know, it's actually, they give you a little bit of information here. You're supposed to turn it into a 1-sentence lead. Okay, just 1 sentence. Okay. And again, the whole idea there is, why is that related to digital media? Because the whole idea there is that, again, the people who write for news organizations will take a lead and turn it into a breaking news alert that'll appear on your phone. You know, the very first paragraph in your story, they'll turn that into, see what they got here today. Right? Here's the News 12 lead. the new normal. What do we know about the first pill that could treat COVID-19? Okay. I mean, that could be the first sentence of a story, right? All right. All right. So I want to make sure you have that down. So that's going to be due the same day. And all you need to do there is just write, just write. There's going to be like seven pieces of information to turn in the leads on the first part. And the second part has 5, I think. Yeah, 5. So just write a sentence lead out of that, the first 7 and the last 5. 12, okay. And then just turn it as a Microsoft Word doc. Okay. Anybody have any questions on that? So I'll make sure we get that down pat first. Okay. Okay. So what Bill's going to do here, Bill's going to talk about his career and that sort of thing. He's been a longtime journalist. And make sure I get this out of the way. And he actually has been probably digital longer than anybody in the history of the planet. A little hyperbole there. Thing about digital media is that it actually really derives, the whole idea of being succinct and exact, I think, derives from wire service reporting. It's almost like what does that mean? Wire service reporting is like the Associated Press. Okay. It's Bloomberg, it's Reuters. It's the stuff that goes, back in the 1929 stock market crash. You'll hear about talk about the tickers, stocks dropped like 90%, blah, blah, blah. And they would come across in a ticker. That was your old-fashioned digital media. Okay. It came across on a piece of paper and it was immediate and came right to you right away. Okay. So by the time he started working as a wire service reporter in 1990,
92 or 93.
Yeah.
93. Yeah.
So that was actually a couple years before the internet, right? So it exploded. So he actually had to deal with, from the get-go, the whole idea of actually being a type of journalist that actually would deliver things immediately and quickly and simplistic. Okay. So that's actually essentially been largely his training. And then, so he's going to talk about that. He's also had a long career in public relations where he can talk about that. Okay. I also think it's good having another person here as listen to me drone on all the time. So anyway, Bill is now what's your title now?
I'm a director at KPMG.
He's a director at KPMG. Pretty much helps run the public relations, right?
Yeah, I work with the healthcare and life sciences practice and also the tax function too.
Yeah.
So I'm basically working at a Big Four.
Yeah, there's like 4 really big accounting firms. I don't know if you guys know that, but there are. Yeah, and he works at one of them. So without further ado, Bill, if you want to maybe talk about yourself, how you came to be at Bloomberg I'm sorry, Reuters.
Yeah. So
and and like the kinds of things you did there, that sort of thing. And this will also be like kind of connected. This will be related to what we are going to be doing for this assignment I talked about that I'll be due like in a month, which we'll talk about later. Okay.
How many of you plan on going into journalism as a career? Okay.
If you don't, it's
how
fine.
many? Yeah. I mean, how many of you
Either
plan
way
on going into public relations or kind of affiliated career? Well, sorry. Basically, what you learn here will help you whether you decide to go into academia, marketing, law, media. Basically, the ability to write well is super important as far as career skills go. Not only that, I'm going to throw another thing on top of that. Being a good public speaker is also a key. I mean, if you plan on becoming a leader at any kind of organization, you have to be a very good public speaker. That's almost like a prerequisite. So, if as an undergraduate, if you have an opportunity to take a public speaking course, do so. I don't know if it's required here at Rutgers, but I would highly recommend it. Or just look for opportunities where you can work on presentation skills as well. But as far as journalism goes, I'm a graduate from Trenton State College, now TCMJ, 1989. Tom and I graduated from Pleasantville High School together, class of 1985.
Yeah.
So we're both middle-aged guys that are just kind of getting old. But
To say the least.
so I was one of the editors at my college newspaper. We were both co-editors of the high school newspaper. We've kind of been building toward this. If you plan on going into journalism, I would suggest joining any publication at Rutgers just to get clips, so you have something to take to your first job. That'll be immensely helpful and gives you an immeasurable leg up over somebody who just sat in their dorm room and didn't write anything for public consumption. Because if you want to get your foot in the door, it pays to have those clips, because that's what your first editor is going to ask for, just to see that you can write well and you've had your copy edited by other people. So when I graduated Trenton State College, I had some difficulty finding a job in journalism, even with my background as an editor. I had some good internships. I worked in the State House Bureau for the Trenton Times. I worked for the Asbury Park Press. College graduation happens, and I'm just like, oh shit. There's no jobs, and so I took a job at Enterprise Rent a Car. I mean, did that for a year.
What'd you do there, Bill?
Oh, it was just, loads of fun dealing with the public,
Wash cars.
washing cars, and
With your suit on.
your nice little necktie on and everything else. I mean, I don't want to, any work is good work, but, it's not what I had expected to do when I got out of college. So,
We should have worked on the boardwalk still. We worked on the boardwalk together. That was like
Yes.
the best job ever, I gotta say.
yeah, if I
No,
paid more than
no,
minimum
no.
wage, I'd still
My
do
journalism jobs were the best.
Yeah, but so I sold insurance for a year after college, and then I said, screw it, I'm going to take the plunge. I worked as a stringer, which is a part-time writer at the Ocean County Observer, now defunct, because that's what happens to small newspapers that struggle along. So I worked at the Ocean County Observer, covered town meetings, hustle back, write up quick, 300, 400 word story to get published the next day. And then you'd stand over your story while your copy editor's working it up, and the copy editor will ask you questions and essentially rewrite your story for you. It's funny, even at a small newspaper, you can find some immensely talented copy editors. And I thought
Yeah.
the editors at the Ocean County Observer were decent.
They were,
I parlayed that, my college clips plus the clips I got from the Observer. I went to a weekly newspaper called Beacon down in Manahawkin, Southern Ocean County. Covered cops, courts, town hall, school boards, feature stories, basically all the happenings in Stafford Township and Barnegat and Waretown, which is, a vast swath of Ocean County that didn't have as many people back then, but it was a good experience. And then from there, I was only making $15,000 a year, which it was not a lot of money, so you kind of struggle along through your first few jobs in journalism. Actually, we were so poor that we qualified for what's called WIC checks, like because I had a family and I had a young daughter at the time. I was 25, 26 years old. So the WIC checks helped get baby formula.
It's welfare.
For my daughter. Yeah, it's so
He doesn't mean to scare you. He's done very well since.
yeah,
Look at him now.
Well,
He's a healthy individual.
it takes and I told this to my own kids and my stepsons that I didn't have a real middle class job until I turned 27 years old. So you kind of, so when you get out of college, it's gonna take a while. So don't get discouraged, keep your chin up, keep moving along, and eventually things will turn for you. The thing is, you just have to keep plugging away at it until you find your niche or what you're good at. I ended up getting a job at Reuters. I took a temp job, and as a temp at Reuters, I essentially tripled my pay from what I was making at the Beacon. And so I basically was earning a middle class living. I was a member of the newspaper guild.
He doesn't want to hear this, but he's like probably the smartest person I know. He could read Ayn Rand in like a day or two. Ayn Rand is like this libertarian who writes in this language that
and what happens is that you eventually outgrow it. And you say, so at Reuters, I worked at what's called the equities desk, which is one of the busiest news desks in the world. The job there is you're writing news for an investor audience. Your time to the second on how quickly you get your headlines out. You have to follow up headlines with what's called a news break. So I'll give you a sense of what's happening here. So a bulletin or headline is, so that's basically, it could be a merger. It could be a happening in Washington. It could be, basically something that's top of the news or something that's going to move markets. You're going to write it in 80 characters. It's kind of Twitter before it was Twitter, and put it out on the wire for the markets to react. So if you're so speed is important, but accuracy is even more important. So you want to be able to nail down the story pretty succinctly and then follow it up with a news break, which is 1 or 2 paragraphs within 10 minutes after this news bulletin. So I'll use probably one of the biggest stories that happened. I was in the newsroom on September 11th. I was in Midtown Manhattan.
that's right.
And we had CNBC on the television. We couldn't see what was happening, but we put out a bulletin. I want to make sure I get this right. We didn't say that a plane crashed because we didn't know what exactly hit the first tower, but we also attributed it to what we were seeing on TV. So CNBC had this footage of a big hole in one of the World Trade Center towers. Smoke billowing from hole in base of World Trade Center tower. Then after that, we actually witnessed the second plane hit the building on CNBC. And then we were able to say plane crashes into World Trade Center building. We still attributed it to the television because we didn't have an eyewitness on the ground that was phoning it in. Reuters reporter says plane hits. We still had to, be very careful about how we attributed this. So you want to be careful about how you state your facts, because one of the things that you come across in journalism is you also have very skeptical readers. Like, who says this is true? You're finding that people are disputing, debating facts about vaccines and efficacy about masks and all this other stuff within just covering a pandemic. So you want to be able to stand by your sources to say, okay, this is a valid news source, and be, very mindful of where you're getting our facts from. So after you file that news break, so it's 2 paragraphs, what you want to do is start to get some more details and follow up, build a fuller version of the story. So, after, we'll use the example of 9/11, you have those 2 paragraphs. You can always update that as the details become more apparent, when it's clear that a second plane, that 2 planes actually hit the building. When you start to have, like, okay, here's government sources. By 11, I think it was 11:30, one of the towers collapsed.
Yeah.
So you're going to update that. So as you go along, you're updating the story to the facts that are on hand, while being very mindful about attribution. You might have witnesses quoted, you might have a government official reacting. You might have companies that were inside the World Trade Center putting out their own statements, like, okay, we have to cease operations because a plane hit our headquarters. Like, I think Empire Blue was one of the health insurers in there. A big trading house called Cantor Fitzgerald lost hundreds of employees in the World Trade Center attack. You also, this is kind of more of a business related story about market sources, but if there's any sort of impact on the stock market or within the companies that might have been affected inside that building, you might want to talk to analysts and consultants that could tell you more information about, what the longer term consequences are. These are kind of like, if you're working on stories about deals, or if you have, or you want to talk about somebody who might be, an owner of a piece of one of the businesses that are in there, you could always get feedback from them as well as potential market sources. But you also want to be very clear about where that information is coming from, because sometimes when you're covering what could be fairly routine news, people might want to talk up their own book. Like if they're sitting on an investment, like if I have a stock in a particular company and I'm talking to a reporter, I might want to talk it up a little bit, because you should be clear that, okay, this person's an investor in the stock and holds it. So that gives the reader a sense to say, okay, here's somebody who owns it. We don't want to, they're being truthful, but we have to put a little bit of skepticism there. Like, okay, this investor might be talking up their own book. Or you might have somebody who's like, there's something called short selling within the stock market, where you're actually betting on stocks to fall. And you could go short. Basically, it's you borrow stock, sell it, and hope to buy it at a lower price. So what you'll see is short sellers kind of talking down somebody's book. Like they'll say, oh, this company's run by a bunch of frauds, or, short sellers have a place in the market. And they better be very clear about their own point of view. They better be clear with the facts that they have on hand. Short sellers were some of the people that knew how to profit when the mortgage, like the 2008 financial crisis, when the mortgage community just went haywire and the housing markets were just collapsed. There's a story called The Big Short.
Yeah.
They made a movie. Steve Carell was in it. Very good movie. Explains everything about like the mortgage bond market in a way that's kind of entertaining. But that those people basically were able to bet against the particular market. So beyond this update, so let's say you have a major story. A trunk story is going to be the main story that you want your, to hang your hat on and continuously update as things progress through the day. But what you can develop from that is sidebars. Major news of the day, big consequences. Let's say a company's buying another company. You'll have this trunk story, but you might have a sidebar about, okay, how is the town of the company that's going to be acquired affected? I mean, is there going to be job losses? That, those are the kind of angles that you want to pursue to help flesh out and give a fuller truth to what's happening in the news events. And what you could do is pull elements from the sidebars to help populate the trunks, that main trunk story that you're gonna have read. You might borrow a paragraph from the sidebar to populate the trunk story, but the sidebar might be, 5 paragraphs, not, it doesn't have to be a full-blown feature story, but it can give you like a bit of additional perspective. Any questions? Yes.
I have a question about currently, right now, we have COVID like bulletins all the time, and it's always the same thing. What do you think it's like, what is that actually doing something? I just like, at this point, I just stopped like reading the news. It's
You're
like,
right.
so, it's just the same, people are dying, everything's terrible, we're all gonna die, and also everything's terrible. Like, that's, it's the same thing over and over.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I think if you're getting your news from TV. Oh, okay.
Right.
Well, but I mean, TV or radio, they're assuming that you're only going to listen for maybe a half hour tops. So, they're like CBS in the morning, like they do the traffic on the 8s and they do, basically they're assuming that you're only going to be in the car for a half hour. And TV, they're pretty much in a similar mindset about how they cover the news of the day. With I guess you're getting your news off the phone, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Some of that just might be that there's not enough of a new development to change the tone of the top story of the day. I mean, if the CDC comes out and says something like, okay, this is how many people have died from COVID, this is how many people who are infected in COVID, and it's really is a tragedy. I mean, there's no other way to characterize it, and this is probably the biggest healthcare story in more than 100 years. There was a Spanish flu pandemic in 1918, and that's what this is often compared against. As a percentage of population, more people were lost in the 1918 flu
Now-
pandemic than today.
Right. But the actual number now is exceeded.
But yeah, the actual number of deaths that we're seeing now, I mean, we've lost more people to this virus than what we've lost in World War II. I mean, it's obscene.
Soon we'll get the Civil War.
And you're looking at, I just, unfortunately, there's a great deal of misinformation out there. And it's frightening about where some people get their news from. And, just the denial and the political agendas of people to deny that science is real.
Bill's basically, like I said, Bill's kind of was there like when, the advent of like World Wide Web and everything, I mean, when that
Yeah,
was around.
I
it
would
was
say
like,
it
and he was dealing with like digital, like form of journalism way back when, but you've spanned like so many different like news events and you've been there for the evolution, which is-
Yeah, I would
pretty
say,
incredible.
you see,
When you
now,
think about it.
when Reuters and Bloomberg, they sell terminals to put on traders' desks, and these traders pay upwards of $1,500 a month just to have a continuous news feed. So it's kind of like they want the news quickly because they try to make money on trading stocks. They're looking to buy and sell, or and having that couple seconds jump over your competition can mean the difference between making and losing money for these traders. So so this is how it was back in the early 90s, and it's still like that today. But around 1996, we saw the internet become commercialized when you have, the internet has dated back to the 1960s. It was something created by the Defense Department. But in the 1996, there was what they call the browser done by Netscape. Microsoft ended up copying, developing its own browser to access the internet. And, it became a means to deliver information quickly, but it didn't have anywhere near the capabilities that it has now, where you could get live streaming of video. I mean, back then, if you, are any of you familiar with Moore's Law about computer chips? Okay. Moore's Law is basically, it's inspired by one of the founders from Intel. Maker of probably most of the computer chips in this PCs here. Moore's Law is that computing power will double every 18 months. So back when the internet was first coming about, we were looking at modems that were like in kilobytes, which is like a fraction of what they are able to do now. I mean, now you could, so the format of seeing a picture online, it would be like almost like dots
Yeah, right.
feeding into the computer as you go along, and it just takes a lot of time to load a simple picture. Now it's gotten to a point where, so that expansion of computing power has led to basically online commerce, video entertainment, changes in how we shop. Let's see, travel. I mean, it's so just about every business that we've had in the past 20 years has just either had to transform or become extinct to adapt to the internet. And
Now it's YouTubers.
yeah, and as I work, I now work for an accounting firm, and what we're seeing among big businesses is that they've had to adapt to how people shop. So all the retailers have had to change how they do business by, stepping up, like making it easier to shop on your phone, changing how your goods are delivered. So, there the things that they're doing now to adapt to the pandemic. A lot of this was planned out originally before the pandemic to occur over 10 years. A lot of them have had to like step everything up and do it within 16 months as far as getting their operations in order. And there's going to be a lot of businesses that don't make it through this pandemic. I mean, you've seen a few bankruptcies and that kind of thing now. But yes.
Wait, what was Peacock, that whole streaming service?
Yes.
Was that something that they were like, oh, do it now?
Good point.
You know what? I think. All right. So here's the thing.
Probably like the worst thing of all time.
Yeah.
It sucks.
I took all my shows from Netflix.
I
and now
know.
My subscription is completely worthless.
Now Jerry Seinfeld, who was jealous of Friends doing better business than him, he's like, "Oh my God, I'm going to be on Netflix now, so you can go to me."
So, yeah. Here's what we're seeing with. All right, I'm going to give you a little bit of market commentary here. So, and this is not me
But
speaking.
by the way, just a point about him. One of the things he talks about is like, because the thing is, he's actually been in basically covering and dealing with business for a long time. So there's probably another great thing for having Bill here is that there's probably no area of journalism that probably has to deal with 24/7, as they would call it, than business. Because if you think about it, actually, like, again, I may have said this already, but like seconds matter, sometimes minutes matter, and I've actually drawn this parallel too. I mean, if he has to, when he worked for Reuters or something like that, he was in constant competition with like Bloomberg, right? So like, you want to be right before you're fast, but at the same time, you also want to be fast. So you want to make sure that you have your stuff out on the wire, because again, something could happen that could change the course of some business or whatever, trading or whatever, in just a matter of seconds. So you want to make sure that you're speedy, and and then at the same time you have like, you don't have to know all this stuff, but I mean, it's like that you have a lot of this stuff like down pat in the back of your mind for background and stuff like that. You understand the importance of it. You know, when things like this happen, like when,
And this is completely riffing here.
when they made the decision to take on The Office, which was like the most popular thing on freaking streaming, right? And take off Netflix and put it on Peacock. I mean, that probably like, right, Bill, that might have affected things.
Oh, yeah, I mean, and I'm going to give you like a,
And then
this is-
they took Friends off Netflix and put it on HBO Max, you know? So like those types of decisions and everything, you gotta be there to announce that decision. You gotta be the first one to say it, because it, you know, it might have like some sort of like domino effect, you know? And so much now with the pandemic and everything. I mean, yeah, those things do matter now. Those things are so important to people nowadays, you know, those streaming services, you know? So yeah, so it's like, so seconds, minutes matter when those types of decisions are made, because they affect things like that he's showing up there, like market share, you know, the amount of people the amount of money people make, you know. And then it actually, of course, it affects their decision as they're, I mean, now there's all this digital investing now, it affects, you know, how they're investing digitally, or, you know, not just digitally, but, you know, physically on Wall Street too, so.
so.
My son John was a Robinhood trader.
So I'm just gonna pull like two
Yeah, I
companies
know.
out of the hat. So, all right, you want to talk about digital investment? Netflix is a standalone company. It's trading at $611 a share. I mean, well, the market opened less than 15 minutes ago.
Wow,
Their price to earnings ratio is 68, all right? 68 times. For you to get $1 of earnings out of a company, you need to invest $68. Super high valuations. This might not be the best example. I picked Disney because they have Disney Plus, but they also have theme parks, ABC TV, ESPN. So they're a bit more of a conglomerate. And this figure this might be a bit affected by lower earnings at the theme parks from the past year, because they had to shut down during the pandemic. So let me find something that doesn't have a theme park. But what you want to do is they might have stepped up their digital investments, like Peacock, you know, part of Comcast, part of NBC Network. There's a lot of sum of the parts, but this is a really, really lofty valuation. I mean, you know, you're betting on like some real high growth to be taking place here. I mean, there's not a lot of room for error when you're trading at 60 times earnings. When you're Disney, you know, you might have a theme park business.
Isn't that where they make most of their money?
They make a big chunk of it there, but they also, I mean, ESPN.
Oh, right, ESPN. ESPN's
And
a
then
huge money
ABC,
maker, right?
which is broadcast. Then you have Disney Cruises.
Bill's just, you don't have to know all this stuff. Bill's just trying to give you like
But if you,
what it's like for where he sits, you know?
but what you want, but if you're in an executive suite, you're thinking, okay, if the market's going to can value us close to this, this is where we want to double down, and that'll help our stock price. So, you know, so if the market's going to like reward your digital investments, and Disney has a treasure trove of assets that they could put out there and stream. I mean, Disney Plus, Hulu, you know, that's a very, you know, I think some of that is actually reflected in this valuation here, that they could actually do well globally by doubling down on that digital, you know, like their streaming service.
You can double down, you know, like investment.
Yeah, you know, maybe not put as much money into ESPN, like when the next football contract comes out, you know, where they're paying $1 billion for the rights to televise Monday Night Football. And, you know, they might not put as much into ABC, into programming. So you might see The Bachelor 7 and 8 to fill more programming.
Yeah, it's
because
also cheap to manage.
produce,
Yeah.
right? So,
That's already evident that they don't put much money in ABC.
Yeah, so I mean, so as a general concept, what you want to do is put your money where it's going to be rewarded in the marketplace. So that's why you're seeing that kind of step up in digital investments and streaming. I mean, HBO Max is probably, let me see. Actually, Discovery networks, you know, HGTV, Food Channel, they're actually buying Time Warner's TV program, the TV programming to build up its own digital platform.
Things are really going downhill, huh?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, I'd be a little bit nervous if I were in a traditional movie studio because, you know, it's not like Netflix is, you know, they're being very selective with how the kind of event TV that they want to do. I mean, like beyond Stranger Things and The Crown and, you know, some of those marquee titles, there's a lot of crap. I mean, it really is. I mean, I'm kind of running out of things to watch on my Netflix too. So, yes.
Kind of talking about this digital content, it reminds me of especially the part about it reminds me that Showtime and Hulu all have like a Spotify. You have like a student deal with Spotify, you get Hulu and Showtime for free.
Oh yeah.
Where exactly is it? So like, how exactly does that work for them? Because I assume that Showtime gets promotion for that.
They're hoping to make it habitual. Yeah, it's almost like, you know, how financial companies will target college students with credit cards. It's kind of like a similar mindset. This is probably less toxic than credit cards and borrowing on credit cards, but the idea is basically to, you know, get you while you're young and hopefully you'll be a customer for decades. And that's, you know, like the marketers don't really care about us because we're set in our ways. We're not really changeable about, you know, what we're interested in. You know, I mean, most of the stuff I'm interested in is fairly juvenile.
They
but
just
it's
say,
not-
okay, boomer. You know,
Yeah, but it's not like,
Even though we're not boomers.
yeah, I mean, they're advertising, the advertisers are targeting us for medications, investment services, you know, just, you know,
Keeping
it's
us
a whole
alive.
different mindset than, you know, than trying to appeal to people that are just starting out their households, either as single people or as a young family. So yeah, they're hoping to get you hooked onto their TV service and hopefully you'll keep it as you graduate and continue getting your Showtime to do that rather than going to HBO. But you know, the other thing is that these services are very changeable and, you know, it's a matter of log off, log into something new. So, you know, yes.
But I have a question about that. Sorry, I can shut up, but.
No, it's all good.
Look at that.
So you have all these different like platforms that you could subscribe to.
Mhm.
At some point, I was like, okay, so I want to have Netflix shows, but they all went to like HBO or whatever. And I'm like following wherever Parks and Rec is. And so I cancel my subscription based on where my shows are, like Parks and Rec. So I've just been following that.
Right.
And then when I finish Parks and Rec, I'll have nothing left. And I can't find where It's Always Sunny is. So I
It's
just
still on
didn't-
Netflix.
It's probably on Hulu because it's now part of
Hulu,
Fox.
that's right.
It's not on Netflix, that is for sure.
That's right, it's on
because I
Hulu.
guess
It's on Hulu. Yeah, you kind of almost have to know like the corporate lay of the land
Right,
about who's
right.
buying what. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a reason why Netflix paid $500 million to air Seinfeld
Yeah, of course.
because you know, they figure this is something that they can bank on, traffic. People will watch it again and again. It's very quotable. I mean, especially among people of my age and Tom's age. But yeah, as
We
far
get
as,
It's Always Sunny and medicine.
yeah, so
Keep us alive and keep us entertained. with politically incorrect humor.
yeah, bread and circuses.
But like, that's just encouraging me to just pirate. Like, which I'm not saying I've been doing, but I'm implying that that's what I do.
And.
You know what, though? There's actually like, there's actually like a scam in that too. Because by changing all that stuff, they'd actually like, they take into account that, it's probably a little off track of what Bill's talking about, but, there's a lot of people who don't actually like end those subscriptions. You know? Yeah. And so and I've done this, I've just kind of forgotten, and, my wife will, she goes
Yeah,
through the
the
bills and
$10
she,
a month
yeah,
that they're
and she'll be
taking out.
like, what's this? And I'm like, I thought I canceled that like a year ago, So, so they're actually like, when you move around everything, a lot of places actually, this is how they still make their money actually, is they make it on uncanceled subscriptions. In fact, when I worked at Patch, we were actually originally owned by AOL, right? And AOL was literally like on a respirator because of uncanceled subscriptions from the 90s. There were people who were actually paying for that subscription
dial-up.
for like 20 years, still to this day. That's why it still exists for dial-up, right? Because we used to get the discs in the mail in the 90s, right? Saying sign up for AOL. And they just forgot about it. And because it's taken out, what's the term that's used? It's taken out of your account. What's it called?
Yeah, automatic.
Automatic withdrawal.
Yeah,
Especially like, no offense, but people like older than us, like my wife had to go through her parents' accounts and everything to cancel all this stuff. So literally, like that stuff is like actually like what's helping hold these companies together at the same time, and it's also like giving them a big profit. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
money
not
for
all this
nothing.
stuff now,
Yeah.
It's like, it's crazy. So anyway, that's probably a little bit of an aside, just so you know. So it's like, yeah, they want you to like pump money into these other services and stuff, but at the same time, they want to make sure that you're still on
Yeah,
their
there's
bank
something
or
called a
payroll.
cash cow.
Yeah, cash cow, yeah.
Yeah, and if, what's that?
It's ruined something, like the Olympic stuff, like they really, it's terrible. Because people, I did get a subscription for that, I think to watch like gymnastics, I don't know, I didn't have much to do. And I was I couldn't find, you can't find, they don't like replay it, even with the subscription.
Yeah, actually, I was not a fan of how.
No, it's horrible.
Was that Peacock or was that?
Yeah, that's-
Peacock and
because
NBC.
Oh,
has a
really?
contract
And
with
it
their-
didn't help that there's like a 12 to 14-hour time difference with
No, but
Tokyo
you
too.
could do a replay of things that people watch, because it was like replays of USA basketball. Nobody was interested in that because the basketball team, by our standards, sucked this year. So it was.
Yeah, we didn't get the goal, did we? Yeah.
Yeah, no, we did get. the
Oh, we
goal.
did? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
People were
The
bad.
soccer didn't get the goal. That was-
Women's soccer, yeah.
But it was just like so disappointing. Like you're really like throwing something away. Like,
Oh, and I'm sure in NBC's executive suites or Comcast's executive suites, they're like, boy, oh boy, what do we need to do when the Winter Olympics come around? And how do we fix this? Because that's because and they pay top dollar. I mean, I think they have the broadcast rights through, I think it might be, they usually pay billions of dollars to get those rights for the next several Olympic Games, both summer and winter. And they fly people out to the site of the games. So they move the Today Show over there, and they move the nightly news over there, and they have so it's not only are they paying the Olympic Committee that money, but then there's the disruption to their own business to move their people out to cover the games and to, help flog this. And then, if nobody's watching it on prime time, why did they pay all that money? Well, that's something that's probably scaring the hell out of everybody in ABC, CBS, Fox.
Hey, Bill, the Index computer system went down and because of a phishing issue. It's a long story.
Oh, no.
Do you mind if I have to go down the hall for a while, about 10 minutes? So,
Oh, okay.
all right. Do you mind?
Running the class?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually,
So,
if you wanted to, Bill,
I mean,
if you want to talk
we're
about, we're not.
from journalism, but I'm kind of telling you like business strategy. and
What,
business, it's all good.
I just so you know,
Hey,
you're getting 500 level MBA stuff, like for the price of a 100 level class, or 200 level class.
Bill, if you, I'm not giving out this assignment yet, but if you want to talk about this, Bill, this is the
Oh,
email
okay,
for it.
part
It's
one.
actually right here.
Yeah,
You want to like talk about it a little bit? Just give me a bit. Sorry about that, guys.
I'd like to get another interview too.
okay, so, yeah, this is your assignment.
Well, yeah, it's not due right away. There's no due date on it or anything like that.
Yeah.
So he's just gonna like show you some stuff about
Yeah,
it.
and I didn't even know that what day I was doing this until probably, what, about 2 weeks ago? But yeah, so this is a fictional company that I've made up for the purposes of this class. But this year, I've changed it up because like the last assignment, you know, after doing this 18 years, it just kind of got a bit tired. So I figure this assignment, it's actually based on a real company. Not going to tell you the name of the real company. I changed the names of the executives to protect the names of the guilty and not so innocent. But in my current role as a PR person, I write things like press releases, I write PR plans, I write Q&As to help executives manage interviews that they might be going on and you know, to help them respond well to questions so they don't like say something stupid. You know, that I'm not always successful in that because people are people, and some people, when they get too arrogant with a reporter, you know, you know, they might feel overconfident in an interview and they might say something they shouldn't. Like I'll, you know, as a Big Four accounting firm, one of the things that we should never do is comment on individual stocks because one, odds are they might be a client in some form. So we don't want to cost somebody some business. But I remember I was on an interview when a partner, who's no longer with the firm, by the way, said that he would go short on a company's stock because they had a problem with their cybersecurity. So he basically was telling a Bloomberg reporter, yeah, don't buy the stock. In fact, bet against the stock. And I turned 3 shades of pale and I called the reporter up immediately after the interview and said, listen, he is in no position to talk about investment advice. He's an accountant, not a finance guy. Please don't put that quote in the paper in your story. You know, so that's one of the things as a PR guy, you want to write press releases, but sometimes you have to do things like mop up after a mess. And, you know, actually, he ended up getting canned for saying inappropriate things in front of a woman who we work with, which is, you know, that's one of real world stuff. And it's more than just Me Too. And you know, it's unfortunate that he lost his job because I liked him on a personal level, but he did some stupid things. So, and basically it probably cost him a shit ton of money because, you know, if you're a partner at a Big Four accounting firm, you make a lot of money. So here's the, this is about an executive change at Megalomania Media Company. It's a media conglomerate, much in the lines of Disney or Comcast or Fox or CBS, Viacom. You know, they produce entertainment. And they're we named a new executive. And you know, we get into the notion of why this person's the new executive. And as we get a little further down, we find out, now, why would a company be naming a new executive? You know, what are some of the reasons why we might change the leadership at a very big company? Go ahead. Yeah, actually, if you look down here, Montanez succeeds Steve Austin, who was separated from the company following the board's determination that he violated company policy and demonstrated poor judgment involving a recent consensual relationship with an employee. Okay. So this is to use the parlance of journalism. All right. As a PR person, you want to accentuate the positive. Hey, this is great. We're moving forward with new leadership. If you're a reporter, you're like, oh, this PR guy buried the lead because your news is right here. So it's a buried lead. So, you know, when you're a PR person and a journalist, you're kind of working on opposite sides of the same coin. So you want to, you know, as a journalist, get to your main point. Now, we demonstrate why he was fired, you know, what the circumstances are. One of the things that they do here with this final paragraph is talking about regular obligatory filings. And this leadership transition, it does not have anything to do with financial performance. Basically, it's clearly a personnel issue. This is a guy who did something stupid. So if you're very rich, successful, that doesn't often stop you from doing stupid things. So, so when it comes time to do this assignment, keep in mind, buried lead, you know, yeah, this is a new executive here, but, you know, they're kicking out the old guy because he did something stupid. Yes. Well, I wrote this from the PR perspective. I handed you this assignment. You have to write it as a journalist. So get to the news, write your lead, take in the background.
Like executive is, you know.
Sacked after a relationship, or executive ousted. Yeah, ousted for inappropriate behavior. You know, so, you know, this is actually, I dare say that outside of the names of the executives and the name of the company and what the company does, it was a search and replace. Because this is based on a real press release that was circulated by a Fortune 500 company. And it was by a company that probably every one of you knows, because they seem to have a location in almost every town. It's a fast food company. Yeah, so I mean, so this is like based on real world stuff. And if you're a reporter, that's what you're, you know, this is the kind of stuff that you might see. And actually, you might just say, oh, this guy's an idiot. What the hell did he do? You know, why can't people behave themselves, you know, even as successful adults? But as journalists, you don't put your opinion in these stories because, you know, readers, unless you're a columnist, they don't care about your opinion. They just want the facts. So with this story, stick to the facts. If you want to delve into background, this is, you know, like if you want to support, hey, this is like, you know, don't be afraid to look around and say, hey, we've seen other companies go through leadership changes. I mean, here's Harvey Weinstein, the guy who was running a successful movie studio, total creep and a lout. I mean, it cost him his business being a creep and a lout. And he's, you know, I mean, what he did was inexcusable, but he, you know, so don't be afraid to, you know, draw from background and, you know, but be careful how you attribute those details. You know, like, hey, a court found him guilty of this. That's a fact. That's something that's in your, you know, you can't dispute that a court found him guilty.
But if you're in politics, right?
Yeah.
Writing like, let's say you're writing for the New York Times or Washington Post,
Yeah.
but they're known to have a lot of opinion pieces.
And there's a page for that called the editorial page.
Yeah,
and-
but there's
and the
also a
column
page
page.
called politics.
Yeah, well, sometimes that's,
People actually do want to hear their opinion, like,
yeah,
reflected, so they can hear, like, their positive feedback.
and that's where you might have like a main trunk story in the newspaper, but you also might have an analysis piece that does a lot of interpretive journalism. What kind of additional context, what kind of consequences. You might try to look a little bit more forward than like, hey, if you're going just the facts here in that analysis, it might be a second day story. Or it might be like, if you have the resources like the Washington Post, you might have somebody covering that trunk story, but you might have another reporter doing, okay, let's interpret what this means for the future, given this set of facts that we know now. And that's where you might get those analysis pieces. And that's where you might see some bias creep in. And as a copy editor, you either have to make sure that you're attributing these opinions to somebody else, or as a copy editor, you better press that reporter to say, okay, well, what gives you the authority and expertise to say this? Because you're putting an opinion out there, and you're kind of overstepping your just the facts role as a journalist. As a columnist, you have a lot more latitude, but as if you're doing an analysis piece, you better be careful about how you're attributing what could be opinions or things that could be forward looking, just to say, okay, well, here's somebody that's an expert in the field that could weigh in and say, this is what it means 3 years out for a particular set of circumstances. Or, with this budget that they're still wrangling over in Washington, the infrastructure bill. I mean, there's a lot of good things here. You don't want to be the one that's putting out the opinion. You want somebody else to have the opinion. Just let them, and that's where you have to be careful about it. And there's a lot of criticisms about journalism, about how there's bias creeps into stories. And I noticed that within the Washington, D.C. media, there's almost like, and I think one of my old colleagues who's a senior executive at one of the big newspaper chains, she referred to it as the bubble. And sometimes there's a mindset that you're very, as part of working in DC, all your people work in government, you kind of view solutions by the government much more favorably. Whereas people who work outside DC tend to be a little bit more skeptical about the role of government. So yeah, I mean, so you don't want to fall into that notion. Like, even if you're a DC-based reporter, I think your best ones don't fall into that bubble mindset and tend to be a bit more questioning and like look at things a bit more skeptically. You're like, okay, yeah, you're saying that big government is going to do this, but let's look at the costs and let's look at how it's going to get paid for and who does this. So, so I hope that helps. This is a good good question, so. Any other questions? So I told them about the buried lead.
That's the benefit of coming to the class today. You got the answer.
Yeah, so, yeah, I mean.
A little secret trick here.
Yeah, well,
Does make sense.
the old megalomania assignment, and I'm going to give you a little dirt. And that was based on a rip from the headlines case, but it took place about 18 years ago, 19 years ago. There was a company called Tyco. They had a chief executive who made the cover of magazines, and he was like seen as this guru. It was Kozlowski.
Yeah,
and,
Kozlowski, right. Yeah. 60 Minutes thing.
yeah. So the assignment that I gave out last year, actually last spring, it was a press release talking about this guy's ouster. Poor judgment. But his flaw, and the old assignment was that you had to email me because I buried the lead in the press release, didn't tell any of the details. But if you emailed me, I'd give you the details. A Q&A from the company and an expense invoice talking about a $3 million birthday party that he threw for his wife on the company's dime. Yes,
Yeah.
you know, flying out about
Yeah.
150 of his best friends out to a Mediterranean island with statues that pee vodka and dog fights
Careful.
and all kinds of crazy
This is
entertainment.
the Me Too generation, but they're,
Celine Dion was the entertainment.
it was
like-
pretty gross. Man. It was like,
Oh, yeah, it was like,
it was like that era, well, it was that era of, you know, the Great Recession, right? It was like,
just before it, actually.
Yeah,
So-
right.
So the
And-
market
and
was
like-
still going good, you know?
and you know, I mean, look, I'm not trying to give the guy any leeway here at all, but it's like, you know, people were like hunting for like at the time, like, I mean, there was like so many different reasons for why the economy bottomed out back then, you know? But a lot of people were looking for scapegoats, you know, and they were just ready to like find anybody like the big corporate bonuses. Remember those? You
Oh,
know, the
yeah,
big-
yeah.
the executives and all that stuff.
Well, it's even worse now, but.
Yeah, it's true. It hasn't gotten any better, you know, but it's like they were looking for scapegoats and, you know, this is the guy, you know, Piggy, wasn't that like I was Oink Oink. That was the headline on the New York Post, Oink Oink.
Yeah, so this guy had a full-blown birthday party for his wife that the company paid for. The video appeared on 60 Minutes and also on other places. So, I mean, you know, it was like out in the open. And I mean, it was like just a pure display of excess on every level.
Crazy stuff.
So this guy basically threw a big birthday party and, yeah, it ended up costing, you know,
But Bill did, and this is what kind of the idea is here. I'm sorry, I missed what you talked about, but basically the idea is that when you're working in an environment like this, you know, any kind of journalism environment, it's like one of the reasons why I gave you guys the worksheets is that you have to go, the digital environment, you have to like work faster than you would in the traditional environment that, you know, we grew up in it, especially, and maybe, I don't know, maybe, I don't know if you guys remember it, but it was probably most of the 2000s, you know, up until like we developed iPhones and iPhones became popular. Was the journalism was actually a slower, like kind of like taking more of your time. Now it's much more about like, speed is actually become much more important. So now you're actually like thrust this pile of information and you have to like pick out, you know, you got to pick out that crumb, you got to pick out that diamond in the rough, you know, as they say. And that will basically be the most important part of the story and basically be the story, right? So then it's your job to like work fast to find that. Now what Bill's trying to show you here basically is what he was talking about before was that we would give out this press release, this other press release, where essentially they would bury the lead. Okay. They would basically say that, you know, this guy, we made up names and stuff like that. But it mirrored the Dennis Kozlowski story. And it would be all about these, it would be basically the news release would basically be
the whitewashed
yeah,
version of
like,
what
well,
actually
we've
happened.
made all these changes and we've changed the executives and all.
We
you know,
have
we're
new
doing all these
leaders.
things.
Hey, everything's good, you know?
Yeah, we're doing all these things to clean up things. We're wonderful, blah, blah, blah. And I hate to be such a cynic about it, but this is how it works. And you know, I'm not blaming the public relations people, you know, I'm just saying that, you know, they're trying to like present, their audience is the
Put on a
media.
happy face, folks.
Yeah, their audience is the media, so they're trying to make sure that it's spin, right? You've heard of spin, right? So it's, you basically want to spin it in a certain way. But the lead, essentially, the story that you need to actually like connect to and basically pull out of the story is it was basically the guy, the leader of the company, doing all these like weird bad things, you know, and then essentially getting kicked out of the company. You know, that's the main part of the story. That's the story that has impact. That's the story that matters to people. Not necessarily how this company is trying to like, oh, we're moving these things around and everything's solved. No, that's not how it works. How many times have you seen in the last few years where, especially again, the Me Too movement, you've seen a situation where, especially like with politician, you know, basically something will come up about them, right?
And then,
Or if you're a Mets official.
yeah, well, that too, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Something will come up about them, and then the initial response is like, they'll try to spin it, they'll try to be like,
what's
we're
the,
working against us, we're doing fine, you know, what he had to do, and then nothing to do with the company's activities, blah, 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 so that's what happens initially. is the
and
spin.
what's the fascination with middle-aged executives taking photos of their own private parts and sending them
Yeah,
to
it's
women
gross.
reporters?
It's gross, you know?
Just,
So what
No.
happens is that they eventually, what we didn't see 15 years ago, what we see now is that eventually they have their come to Jesus moment where they basically say, okay, this can't stand, you know? Now we have people actually like, you know, calling them out for the behavior, and then the spin only goes so far, and then eventually the person either has to leave office or, you know, has to leave the company. You know, so that's essentially like what we're trying to show you is, you know, is that, you know, you're working against these forces of industry, forces of politics, that sort of thing in journalism. And it's your job to kind of distill that information to make it as simple as, I like to say in my other class, Writing for Media, the biggest and newest and most important and most unique information possible.
and as a public relations guy, you don't want to use the phrase ever unless you have to.
Yeah.
Demonstrated poor judgment involving fill in the
Yeah,
blank.
that's what they call a red flag.
Yeah, yeah. So
You know,
if you see that in a press release, it's kind of like, all right, somebody really did something stupid. And just, you know,
yeah. So anyway, that's our whole job here, is to be interpreters, is to
Oh,
basically
yeah,
try to
focus
pick
on
out that piece of information that's most important and float it to the top.
focus on the consequence. The guy lost his job, he was
So
kicked out.
So keep that in mind when you do these worksheets, basically, is I want to see you guys actually do that. I want you guys to, there's one in particular, number 7. I'll give this away. Number 7 on the worksheets, in the first section, where there's an attempted murder going on. I hate to say it this way, but there's so many attempted murders that happen in the United States that it's like, that's a story. But there's something about this particular element of that particular information on number 7 on the worksheets that makes this more than just that, okay? There's something about actually what do they call it? Actually the motive involved in this attempted murder that separates this story from every other story that's about an attempted murder, okay? And that comes through interviewing, that comes through just basically digging. So, yeah, so you got to make sure that you pick out that one thing that kind of like sticks out uniquely above everything else. Okay? Anyway, how about we end it right there, because it's 10:20 now. Anyway, let's just give Bill Borden a hand. Thank you. When you're in the middle of a pandemic. Pandemic? No, I'm just kidding. Oh,
I'm immune to
we
that.
talked about the plan before. I was like, is he gonna go into conspiracy here? The pandemic. Anyway,
I mixed my heart dewormer with my Dr. Pepper to ward off COVID.
I did take attendance today, by the way. Thank you. Great job. Okay, I don't think your pictures on the anyway, because I still don't remember his name, but I was able to figure it out on the thing. And thanks very much. And I will have the video overlay for this too. So on Monday will be a workshop day. Again, that's where you'll be able to work on your profiles. And actually, if you want to work on your worksheets too, because that's due the same day too. And I can look over your shoulder and like give you an idea if you're heading in the right direction. Okay.
Just get it all done.
Yeah, just get it all done, get it as right as you possibly can. Okay. So, all right. Any questions?
And don't be afraid to join out your college newspaper. Because
Yes.
if you're looking to do anything in journalism or writing, it pays to have clerks.
I know Target's had some issues with the referendum and the funding and all that, but you know, give it a shot. You know? All right. Thanks very much, guys.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Past 10:20, they might come after me. So, Steve Miller's not here. He's not here to call police. I saw people standing outside his door, all like, where is he? Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Great job on the tennis.
It's always sunny on my Instagram and website.
Oh my God, my son John, my son John and him are very similar. And like, he's like, we gotta watch It's Always Sunny.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Yeah, you guys, I'll see you guys. I'll see you.
Thank you.
See you in a week. See you guys. Yep.
Yeah, you too.
You too, you too.
All right, hold on a second, hold on a second.